omega-3 fats. So you've probably heard about them in relation to things like heart health, brain function, overall well-being, maybe even cognition. But what do you actually need to know when it comes to omega-3s? We're going to break it down. What exactly are omega-3s, why they matter, how to meet your daily needs for omega-3 fats, whether you are somebody that likes seafood, whether you're eating a plant-based diet, where you can get it in food, if supplements are needed. Well, let's get into what the heck omega-3s are.
They're a family of essential fatty acids. So, essential meaning that our bodies can't make them in the quantities that we need them to maintain adequacy. So, we have to get them from food. So there's probably a lot of sources that you might have heard of that are pretty common, like our fatty fish, salmon, and all of that good stuff. But we'll talk a little bit more about today too, some of the nitty gritty of it, some of the plant based sources, because there's a couple of different types of omega-3 fatty acids. Um, and the food sources change a little bit depending on which type of omega-3 we're looking at. But long story short, they are a family of essential fatty acids that, yeah, have lots of hype around them around helping with inflammation, reducing risk of heart disease, and a lot of other conditions that have inflammatory processes linked to them. So I'll stop there. Anything that I missed that we might want to address?
Mike, anything to add?
No, I think that was really good. If you guys are interested, I could get into the couple of different types of omega-3s that we're primarily interested in our diet. The first one is ALA, or alpha linolenic acid. And some primary food sources are ground flaxseed or flaxseed oil, canola oil, soybeans, walnuts or walnut oil, as well as hemp hearts and chia seeds. And the important thing to know is that our body can convert ALA to our other two omega-3 fatty acids that we're concerned about. That's EPA and DHA. But this conversion is also very low. So for us to get the recommended amounts of EPA and DHA, typically it will not come from conversion from ALA. We primarily will get it from other food sources like herring and sardines, or mackerel, salmon, trout, Arctic char, and halibut. So a few ways to get more omega-3s into your eating routine is to cook with canola oil or bake with walnut oil. You can grind whole flax seeds and store it in the freezer to prolong shelf life, and then you could just add that into smoothies or oatmeal or your other baking. You can also add walnuts into homemade trail mix for a snack or as added crunch in salads and muffins. And you can also add edamame beans or soybeans or tofu to a vegetable stir fry, which is a delicious way. We actually like adding edamame to lots of our different dishes at home. And then you can also add chia seeds or hemp hearts to your oatmeal or morning smoothie. So it's just a few different ways you can get some more omega-3s into your diet.
Fun fact of the day, walnuts I'd probably put up there with my favorite nut. And I don't know why, if that's just because you can get a giant bag of them at Costco for a pretty decent price, but or that they look like brains.
For spooky season, it is close to Halloween when we're recording this. So
Imagine somebody wearing a hat that was just a half a walnut. Like that was their hat. So it looked like their head was half a walnut.
I would have never imagined that. No.
So like maybe that could be a market opportunity for a bike helmet or something like that.
Ooh, I like it. Yes. Excellent breakdown of ALA, Mike. Might one of you want to try and sound out the full version of EPA and DHA? The full words?
I'll take DHA just because it's, alphabetically it's first, and that is docosahexaenoic acid.
Very nice.
I'll take EPA, and I can't see where I have it written down, but I'm pretty sure it's icosapentaenoic acid.
Nice. Nice. Very good. So yeah, the one piece that has come up, and now I haven't done enough reading into the in depth and to look at the conversion of uh, alpha linolenic acid from plant sources, or also, well, I guess we'll get into it when it comes from supplements, but other food sources that are sources of EPA and DHA, like algae. But we'll get into that. The conversion of ALA into EPA and DHA was really fascinating. I remember when we went through this in university and went through the conversion. I'm just like, it's such a wild process because it's there, but it's so low. It's like, what is the purpose of this wildly inefficient process in the body? But it's still there. And I also feel like I remember seeing something that the pros like the conversion can get better and worse depending on your intake of EPA and DHA. Is that legit?
Yeah, where I have kind of gone down the rabbit hole before is that just, yeah, the conversion is fairly low, but then it can also be impacted even just by the individual person. So some people might have less conversion depending on conditions that they're living with, or some people might have more. And then it's also not necessarily a concern because we're also getting EPA and DHA in our diets too. Um, I've seen a little bit about if we're getting omega-6 fatty acids that they kind of compete for some of the same enzymes that convert them into longer chain fatty acids. And so that's where we see like increasing ALA, our omega-3 intake, um, can show increased levels of EPA and DHA in good amounts, but mainly when it's replacing our linoleic acid, which is an omega-6 fatty acid. So you can see how it gets complicated. But what it means for, I would say, the general population and general recommendations is let's start first with trying to achieve our EPA and DHA needs through food if we can get it, just so that we don't need to necessarily worry about if there's any low conversion rates of ALA to EPA and DHA. And then, yeah, if there's some dietary restrictions that we need to consider that impacts your ability to get those food sources of EPA and DHA, then we can consider other like plant-based sources, how we can potentially bump that up a little bit more to accommodate for that. Or maybe we can consider a supplement if it's worth the money in your wallet and maybe a specific benefit that we're looking for because signs, symptoms, and actual clinical deficiency of omega-3, from my understanding, is quite uncommon. So it's really even getting at, do we need to supplement to change something that we wouldn't know if it changed or not? But another conversation for down the road, perhaps. But yeah, anything that I missed there, you guys?
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of the essential fatty acid deficiencies, but mostly in the context of just very low fat intake in general. Like if you're getting enough fats, and of course, outside of the context of a dietary restriction that may be in place for whatever reason, um, or an intolerance or significant sensitivity that would restrict somebody's intake, then yeah, it's if your fat intake is sufficient, the chances of you having a problem with sufficient omega-3 status, to make sure everything is running as it should be and optimally is that's what I've also seen too. This is quite uncommon, and that's usually why. It's because if you get enough fats, a variety of foods. Now that's there's going to be niche cases where that isn't always the case. You can't generalize, but that's that's something pinged in my brain. Mike, anything that you could think of?
Yeah, a couple of things there that you didn't mention, Laura, or kind of just touched upon on the side there is some of the factors that might reduce conversion of ALA to omega 3s. You already mentioned the high linoleic acid. That's an omega 6 fatty acid. Like I said, they compete for the same enzymes. But then also, there are sex based differences where premenopausal women show higher conversion rates of ALA to EPA and DHA compared to men. And this is likely due to estrogen's role in upregulating fatty acid desaturase enzymes. That is a mouthful. I apologize.
You got through that really well. There was no trip ups there, man. Well done.
I've been practicing off camera. So, but with that said, is that what you basically need to know is that estrogen helps to make these enzymes work better. So that's why that we're seeing premenopausal women have better conversion rates. And also, there's also another thing called genetic polymorphisms, and what that means is just different genetics. People have different genes, and that you have a variance in some genes that will significantly affect conversion as well. And then age, conversion efficiency decreases with age. So while someone like myself would have a lower conversion, someone like Laura and then you, Brandon, as well, would have a better efficiency at converting those enzymes, or converting those fats rather, to omega-3s. And then finally, there are different disease states that can also impair the conversion pathway. But that's maybe another conversation altogether.
I didn't know that about the estrogen impacting that. See, even I learned things on these episodes, and I'm the host. That's cool. Uh, that actually gets into another thing. So there's specific areas wherein omega 3s in for humans are particularly important. You mentioned a little bit about specific disease states, but and I feel like both chronic disease and yeah, particularly with chronic diseases, there are particular areas of health that omega 3s have either been talked about a lot or have merit to focus on. Anything, any of the areas that come to mind?
I can tackle the one that I see a lot when I'm working with clients um, undergoing treatment for or living with cancer. Um, Omega 3 is actually something that is kind of indicated and recommended oftentimes um, for people with advanced cancer undergoing chemotherapy, or maybe they're at risk of weight loss or becoming malnourished. Maybe we are at risk of essential fatty acid deficiency. Um, so that's something that's indicated. And if you go to the clinical practice guidelines for nutrition care with cancer patients, then um, it's a weak recommendation. So there is evidence to show that it can help with these things that I mentioned, like improve appetite, food intake, can really help with maintaining your lean body mass if you are undergoing cancer treatments, and just the nature of cancer itself that can waste some of that muscle or lean body mass. So there's some good kind of results with that. They can be conflicting in terms of how much of an effect it really has. Um, so the jury's still out, but based on that, it's always good to consider it. Typically, a low risk supplement to take. Of course, there's some medications that you might be taking that you want to chat with your doctor or pharmacist about that can interact with omega 3s. And maybe we can chat a little bit about that. But generally speaking, the biggest limitation that I've heard of with implementing these kind of therapeutic doses of omega 3, so more than you need to even just like um, maintain your dietary needs, is the fishy taste that you get with a lot of them. Or sometimes it can cause acid reflux as a main side effect for people, or you get literal fishy burps as well if we are going for a typical fish oil. So it's just the actual acceptance of the supplements. And again, that's a therapeutic dose to get more than you need from the diet to test those specific outcomes, like improved appetite and lean body mass maintenance and all of that stuff. Uh, so that is one condition where I have gone down the rabbit hole of looking into, um, but also weighing it on the individual basis. Is it worth it to you? Is it not? Does it have an effect or does it not? Um, and then many other conditions that have been researched. So maybe I'll leave it to somebody else to go over the other ones.
Yeah, Laura. So you mentioned cancer and there how omega 3s are, often recommend to be supplemented there. A bit of the research that I was involved with when I was at the University of Alberta was looking into this, and they found that supplementation with omega-3s during treatment for in this rat model, it was protective of muscles. So essentially, there's this thing called myosteatosis, and that is where there's fat infiltration around the skeletal muscle. And so we were seeing in these models that supplementation with omega-3s helped prevent myosteatosis. So there was less fat infiltration around the muscle with the subjects that had the supplementation of the fish oil. So being very like protective there of your muscle and tissue, which we know as you can maintain your muscle mass is a predictor of better outcomes in cancer patients and across lots of different disease states, but especially in cancer patients, preserving that muscle mass and quality of muscle mass is super important in better outcomes.
See, that's interesting because when in one of my areas in sports performance, when you look at omega-3 supplementation is often looked at in for athletes in terms of lowering inflammation. Uh, but when you look at the research done, a lot of it is looking at recovery. A lot of the research looks at blood markers, and then there's this leap to like, oh, if we see this, in theory we should see improved recovery. But for most research that I've looked at that's looking at performance endpoints, meaning does this actually make somebody faster or stronger or anything close to that, which kind of pinged in my brain when you both were talking about muscle mass. We don't see the benefit there as much. There's probably a variety of reasons for this. Most athletes that are not restricting intake, I mean, there's just really no benefit to taking more of it. It's kind of like any other nutrients. If you're getting enough of it, taking more of it's not going to necessarily do much. So, which means this is outside of the context of a deficiency or an insufficiency, which Laura, you noted, is pretty rare. But yeah, it's interesting to see that the contrast about like this group where there's potential benefit. Um, of course, more research needed. But then there's this other group where it's like, not really. So we can't, and I'm sure many people on the interwebs will do this. Will say that you just paint it with the same brush and say yes or no. It's like, well, depends.
Yeah, I wonder, like when it comes to applying it to an individual person, if anybody's ever asking me about should I take an omega-3 or is this a good amount of omega-3 to take? The answer is I don't know, maybe never satisfied to the person, but it really just depends on the person. Um, really, the main area that I've heard it used and I think is still recommended is for like heart disease and heart health, um, preventing heart attacks or heart disease related events. And that is something where my recent dive into it is that the evidence is still conflicting if that provides like a meaningful um, result in outcomes, like less heart attacks or less cardiovascular related events. I think the jury is still out for that. But it's interesting because we know that people with like the highest and most adequate dietary intakes of omega-3 from like fatty fish, or we can't get enough through ALA and other sources, um, then they have the least or the lowest rate of occurrence of heart disease. So, um, the overall recommendation that I usually veer towards is if we can get it from food, that's probably going to give you the most meaningful long term effects and chronic disease prevention. And if it's something that your wallet is open to, then maybe we can consider a supplement, but always obviously asking your doctor and considering other conditions that you might have to make sure that that is okay to take. Um, and yeah, because I think we usually can find some good sources for people than needing to rely on a supplement. So yeah, but different people have different things that work for them.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I can't remember the paper, but I did. There was numerous papers that were looking at specific people and looking at supplements, omega-3 intake from supplements, and similar amounts from actual food, and much we see this in many different areas of nutrition, wherein the food version did better. That's not the right words. Had more of an effect on the desired outcome compared to the same thing from supplements. There's probably a variety of reasons for this. You're getting all kinds of other things nutrition wise from food as opposed to an isolated supplement. So one really shouldn't be terribly surprised. But so I've seen it in many different contexts in that case as well.
Yeah, I wonder if it's worth mentioning too, um, because a lot of people do want to take omega-3 supplements because we hear a lot of the benefits, or even, I don't know, if you're dealing with any of the potential symptoms or signs of an omega-3 deficiency, because they are very non-specific. Simple Google saying like, "Oh, I have dry eyes," or "My skin is very flaky and dry. What can I do to help this?" And probably the AI Google result will say something like, "Oh, you should take an omega-3." But the cause of dry eyes, dryness in general, joint pain, stiffness, all of that stuff can be due to so many other things. So, in those cases, I suggest like let's not go straight towards an omega-3 supplement, and identify if there's anything else going on. But nonetheless, yeah, if we introduce more fatty fish, and that's the only thing that we change, and then all of a sudden your dry eyes and flaky skin are 100% cured, then okay, maybe we were hitting the nail on the head with that. But it's just the struggle with deficiencies with omega-3 is they really could, those signs of it can be due to so many other things too. So
It's pretty average Canadian winter. Dry skin, dry eyes.
right now.
Mike, thoughts? You were going to jump in earlier.
Yeah, I think you guys talked about lots of good points there. Something to keep in mind is that the research landscape is constantly evolving with this. I think when omega 3s, specifically EPA and DHA, were initially looked at, we saw lots of evidence for reducing cardiovascular events, right? And then as the research continues and improves and we get more data, we kind of see that, well, maybe it's not as strong as we once found. And then also, even newer research is showing that maybe dosages of higher EPA content are showing the reductions in cardiovascular events and stuff like that. So it's important to note that as we are recording this, this is kind of the information and research that we've seen. But if you're listening to this, far into the future, then things have likely changed as well as we kind of understand more of what goes into these things and we kind of get things more dialed in. And by we, I mean the researchers. I'm not doing any more research anymore like that. But so things are changing.
2 years from now, Mike the researcher. You never know.
Never know.
Um, I'm particularly curious, Mike, because you've dug into a lot of the areas in terms of cognition, cognitive performance, focus, memory, mood, things like this. Have you come across anything in omega threes either to suggest a benefit or it's just been examined? And yeah, I'm curious if you've come across anything in that realm.
Well, yeah, it's super important. I mean, there's been lots of talk about that health benefits and cognition. Lots of different conflicting research. Some stuff shows improvements in spatial memory and focus, and other studies are showing no effects. So it's kind of like, again, it's the conflicting research. A lot of these different studies have different methodologies and will have different age groups and stuff like that. But one thing that we are seeing is that in children with ADHD, a meta-analysis of 16 different studies found that omega-3 supplementation consistently reduces hyperactivity as evaluated by parents and teachers. And this is also on a couple of different standardized tests that they were doing during these things. So, omega-3 is showing improvement there in children with ADHD.
That's interesting. Huh. A continually evolving landscape. I mean, I even remember when university way back when it was still not it didn't even expand into all these areas that we were talking about. It was so much focused on heart health back then that I can remember, anyways. Um, one thing, because for those of you not familiar with Revive Wellness, we are in the smack dab center of Alberta, where there is not a lot of water. So fatty fish, cool. If somebody comes to you and it's like, yeah, I don't really have access to fresh salmon around, how might somebody that is not a fan of, grocery store salmon from the meat department because it's not caught fresh kind of thing, what would be your suggestions for those folks, for food sources, that is?
Yeah, this is all going to be very dependent on your taste preferences. Because yes, in Alberta, there is not a ton of fresh fish. I mean, at least where we are in Edmonton. So totally get that. Um, there are canned options like canned salmon, which is lovely. But again, I know that maybe isn't everybody's taste preference. I love a good salmon sandwich. I don't know about you. But there's other options too that can be quick and easy. Like I know a lot of people will often have eggs for breakfast. And so there are lots of omega-3 enriched or higher omega-3 eggs on the market that if you go for, I think it's 2 eggs a day, you'll be meeting your EPA and DHA needs. So if that's something that somebody's already doing, which I often find, like at least with my clients, they're having like 2 eggs a day at breakfast, then that can fit in very well. Um, there's, of course, our plant-based sources, which are the ALA mostly. So our flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, all of that good stuff, edamame, which is lovely. And then there is some stuff out there. Now, I don't think this is in Alberta, but when I've gone down my rabbit hole, I think like Eastern Canada, they have more options in terms of fortified cow's milk. Like if you do have animal products or fortified plant milks, then they will actually put omega-3 in there. I haven't seen that in Alberta unless you guys have seen that, but I think that is kind of cool as well.
I'm just trying to find the name of the milk the plant milk that has omega-3. Why is it eluding me?
Is it Ripple?
Yes, Ripple.
Pea milk, yeah. Yeah, so Ripple pea milk can be one. I haven't seen that one. Is it pretty readily available?
Yeah, it comes and goes on the shelf at the grocery stores, but it's a little bit pricier
Yeah.
than other milks. But they purposefully added in. I can't remember if it's flax. I think it's flax oil that they add in.
Yeah, I've also seen, I think it's just in Quebec, there is the Natrel brand, which we have here in Alberta, but they, for whatever reason, have an omega-3 fortified option. It's not really hit Western Canada. So
Yeah, good food options for sure. I often forget about the eggs, but I mean they're there. Mike, any other? You went through some pretty solid food options earlier in the episode, so without repeating the entire list of things, any other things pinging your brain as we were going?
Yeah, mostly I think if we're talking about animal sources, with salmon, sardines, mackerel, trout, and halibut. Again, all ocean-based sources there. Um, but yeah, no ocean around Alberta. Real hard to find those things right out of the water. But with that being said, plant-based or animal-based sources aren't the only ones. We talked about some plant-based sources, like those different nuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, through conversion of ALA. But another good plant based source is actually algae oil. So that's a way that you can get some omega 3s in. And, there's less marine or less marine environment disturbance there. I'm less concerned about that, and less marine environment contaminants as well. And fun fact, these fish that we're all getting or trying to get our omega-3s from, they don't make omega-3s themselves. They actually get it from eating the algae that that I'm just talking about. So instead of getting your omega-3s from fish, you should just go direct to the source and maybe try a plant-based algae oil omega-3 supplement as well. If you're vegan or vegetarian, that's a really good way of doing that.
From my recollection too, on the market, I don't think the price is much different, if at all. And I also report, this is all anecdotal reports of, the fish burps. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more fishy if it's a fish oil. Uh, you know, algae still has a fishy taste to it. but not quite as potent as a regular fish oil would be. So even if you're not vegan and you want to try getting the same, because omega-3 says still EPA and DHA, and so still an option for you for sure, even if you're still can consume fish oil.
I wonder, I haven't actually looked at this, but a way that you can avoid the fishy burps or acid reflux, like that main side effect of omega-3 supplements, is having the capsules instead of the straight oil, and checking that they're enteric coated capsules, because they dissolve further down your digestive tract, um, so that you don't get the opportunity for those fishy burps right away. But I don't know. I feel like I've seen mostly the algae supplements being in the like oil form, the liquid form. Have you seen any capsule based?
NutriC has a capsule.
I was just gonna say, yeah, NutriVeg.
Yeah, they're still out
Um,
there. Yeah, you can get them at like most grocery stores have this one in the pharmacy section.
Yeah, at one point to say there from what I've been looking at the NutriVeg stuff, their liquid formulas seem to have higher concentrations of EPA and DHA, whereas the capsules seem to have lower concentrations of EPA and DHA. So you would probably need to take more capsules to, kind of meet what you could get in one serving of their liquid formula. And about the fishy taste or the fish burps, some of these formulations also come in different tastes or different flavors. So there's NutriVeg has a lemon flavor, and there's also a citrus orange something flavor as well that I had seen earlier in some of my research. But it's very very cool that those kind of options are out there, and as well, I believe there's some refined fish based ones as well that kind of work to remove that fishy taste. So lots of different options out there for people.
There's a variety of things. I mean, much like foods, there's a variety of different tastes depending on your profile or your taste preferences, rather, where you're located, and much like hopefully we have conveyed to you many times across all of our episodes, is that we're not against supplements, we're not pushing supplements, but we are like, supplements have a time and a place, and if they fill a gap, then that's something for you to evaluate for yourself if it's worth spending some money on. And much with many supplements, of course, if you're getting a good quality supplement and you're taking it appropriately and you're not doing mega dosing, the chances of something weird happening, the risk is quite low. So experimentation is never a bad thing if you're curious. But if you have any questions, of course, that's what we're here for. You can always come and chat with us, or rewatch this episode 3 times. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Any last thoughts, either of you guys, before I wrap the episode up?
Yeah, I think just as dietitians, we often preach that try and get your things from whole food sources. So, trying to do the best you can there, and where you're not meeting your recommendations or meeting the needs, you can always look for a supplement. But as always, a supplement should supplement what we're taking. It shouldn't be the primary source if we can avoid it at all.
Thumbs up from Laura. Love it. All right, folks. Well, thanks for if you made it this far, thank you very, very much for coming along for the ride. Hope you learned something today. Hopefully there was a couple nuggets in there, or I don't know if you call them fish sticks and not nuggets, because nuggets is chicken. I don't
Good
know.
one.
If you found this episode helpful, please share with somebody that you may find would benefit from it. Like, subscribe, do all of the classic YouTube and podcast things. We'll see you in the next episode coming out, hopefully not too far from now, in a couple of weeks. I can't remember the topic, but it's probably going to be good. So you should probably come back and watch or listen to that. But for now, we'll say enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are, and we'll see you very, very soon.
Bye.